You're nothing without me. Marcus Ashford's words hit Victoria like a slap across her face. Right there in the middle of the Whitney Museum, with 500 of New York's elite watching. Her husband didn't wait for her response. He turned his back on her and walked straight to Serena Walsh, pulled her onto the dance floor, and wrapped his arms around her waist like Victoria didn't exist. 6 years of marriage, 6 years of silence, 6 years of disappearing. But Marcus didn't know that in exactly 43 minutes, a silver-haired man would walk through those doors and take everything he owned. That man was Victoria's father. Comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. Victoria Chen stood frozen at the edge of the dance floor, watching her husband hold another woman. His hand pressed against Serena Walsh's lower back. Their foreheads nearly touched. He whispered something that made her laugh, and Serena's fingers traced the lapel of his tuxedo, like she had done it 1,000 times before. Around Victoria, 500 people pretended not to notice. But they noticed. She could feel their stares crawling across her skin, the whispers slithering through the crowd like snakes. Is that his wife? The one in the green dress? Poor thing, she really had no idea. Everyone's known about Serena for months. How could she not see it? Victoria's legs felt like they might collapse. Her chest was so tight she could barely breathe. The diamond necklace Marcus had clasped around her neck 3 hours ago now felt like a noose. The song ended. Marcus pulled back from Serena, still smiling. Then his eyes found Victoria across the room. Something flickered in his expression. Annoyance, like she was an interruption, a problem to be managed. He said something to Serena. She glanced at Victoria and smiled, a small, triumphant curve of her lips that said everything words couldn't. I win. You lose. Marcus crossed the dance floor toward his wife. His public smile was gone. In its place was the cold, controlled mask she had learned to fear. Victoria. His voice was low, sharp. You look upset. What was that? What was what? You were dancing with her, like that, in front of everyone. It was a dance. He stepped closer, close enough that only she could hear. We're at a gala. People dance. Stop being dramatic. The way you were holding her, Marcus. The way she was touching you. Are you going to make a scene? His fingers closed around her wrist. Not hard enough to bruise, just hard enough to remind her who was in control. Because I would strongly advise against it. You're already embarrassing yourself. I want to leave. Then leave. He released her wrist like he was dropping something distasteful. Take a cab. I'll be home when I'm finished here. Finished with what? Business, Victoria. Something you wouldn't understand. He straightened his cuffs, already looking past her, already dismissing her. Go home. Take a bath. We'll discuss your behavior in the morning. He walked away. Victoria watched him return to Serena's side, watched Serena place her hand on his chest in welcome, watched them melt back into the crowd of glittering, powerful people who had witnessed her humiliation and done nothing. Her hands were shaking. She needed to get out of here. She needed air. She turned and walked as fast as her heels would allow, pushing through the crowd toward the bathroom, keeping her head high even as her vision blurred with tears. The bathroom was empty. Victoria gripped the edge of the marble sink and stared at her reflection. Mascara ran down her cheeks in thin black rivers. Her lipstick was smeared where she had bitten her lip to keep from screaming. She looked broken. She looked exactly how she felt. The door swung open behind her. Victoria didn't turn around. She couldn't face anyone right now. She grabbed a hand towel and pressed it to her face, hoping whoever it was would use a stall and leave. Well, well. The voice was like honey poured over broken glass. Victoria's stomach dropped. She lowered the towel and looked in the mirror. Serena Walsh stood behind her, reapplying lipstick with the casual confidence of a woman who had already won. "I was hoping I'd find you here," Serena said. "We should talk." "I have nothing to say to you." "That's fine. You can listen." Serena capped her lipstick and dropped it into her clutch. "I want you to understand something, Victoria. This isn't personal. You seem like a nice woman. A little simple, maybe. A little out of your depth. But nice." Victoria turned to face her. "Get away from me." "Marcus and I have been together for 18 months, Serena smiled, letting that number sink in. "Did you know that? 18 months of hotels and weekend trips and late nights at the office, and you never suspected a thing. That's almost impressive." "You're lying." "Am I? Ask him about the Maldives trip last March, the one he told you was a conference in Singapore." Serena stepped closer. "Or the apartment in Tribeca, the one he keeps for our meetings. Or the necklace around your neck right now. I helped him pick it out. I thought it would look nice on you. A little parting gift." Victoria's hand flew to the diamonds at her throat. Her skin crawled. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to understand that this is over." Serena's voice hardened. "Your marriage, your little fantasy of being Mrs. Ashford. Done. Marcus is going to ask you for a divorce, probably within the month. And I wanted you to hear it from me first, woman to woman, so you have time to prepare." "He would never." "He already has." Serena pulled out her phone and held it up. On the screen was a text message thread. Victoria's eyes caught fragments. "Can't wait to be free of her. Soon, baby. You're the only one I've ever loved." Victoria felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. "That dress you're wearing," Serena continued, sliding the phone back into her clutch. "The one you designed yourself. Marcus showed it to me last week. We laughed about it. He said you insisted on wearing your art project tonight. He was so embarrassed." Victoria couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't breathe. "Go home, Victoria." Serena's voice softened into something almost like pity. "Pack your things, call a lawyer, and don't make this harder than it needs to be. You never belonged in this world. We both know it. It's time to go back to wherever you came from." She patted Victoria's cheek like she was comforting a child. Then she walked out. Victoria stood alone in the bathroom for a long time. She didn't cry. The tears had stopped somewhere during Serena's speech. In their place was something else. Something cold. Something hollow. She looked at herself in the mirror. The diamond necklace glittered under the lights. The dress she had designed, the dress she had been so proud of, suddenly felt like a costume. A joke. She thought about the past 6 years. She thought about the day she met Marcus. He had walked into her small gallery in Burlington, Vermont, during a showing of her ceramic work. Tall, confident, handsome in a way that seemed almost unreal. He had stood in front of her favorite piece, a large vase with an abstract glaze that reminded her of storms over mountains, and he had said, "This is extraordinary. You made this?" She had nodded, nervous, flattered. "It has soul," he had said. "Everything else in this room is decoration. But this is art." He had bought the piece for 3 times the asking price. He had taken her to dinner that night. He had called her a breath of fresh air. He had said she was unlike anyone he had ever met. She had believed him. She had left her home, her friends, her career. She had moved to New York. She had married him in a ceremony at the plaza that cost more than her parents' house. And slowly, so slowly she almost didn't notice, he had erased her. "Your pottery is lovely, but it's not exactly befitting of an Ashford. Those friends of yours from Vermont, they're sweet, but they don't really fit in here. Maybe you should focus on the apartment, on hosting, on being present for me. She had given up her studio, her art, her identity. She had become Mrs. Marcus Ashford, a decorative object, a possession. And now she wasn't even that. The door opened again. This time it was two women Victoria recognized. Caroline Ashworth and Diana Mills. Board members' wives. Women who had never once invited her to their charity lunches in 6 years. They didn't notice her standing in the corner, half hidden by the floral arrangement.
"Did you see Serena follow her in here?" Caroline said, checking her teeth in the mirror. "I heard they had words." Diana's voice dripped with anticipation. Apparently, Serena told her everything. About the affair, the apartment, everything. Finally, someone needed to. That poor thing has been walking around like a blind woman while her husband parades his mistress in front of the whole city. The real question is what happens next. Marcus told Richard he's planning to file next month. He's already had lawyers draw up the papers. And Serena gets everything she wanted. She played the long game, Diana laughed. 18 months of pretending to be a family friend. Brilliant, really. Did you see the wife's dress tonight? She designed it herself. Marcus told everyone at the Vanderbilt table. He was mortified. She never belonged here. Everyone could see it except her. They freshened their makeup, spritzed perfume, and walked out without ever knowing Victoria was there. Victoria waited until their footsteps faded. Then she walked to the mirror, pulled the diamond necklace from her throat, and dropped it in the trash. She walked out of the bathroom with her head high. The ballroom was still buzzing. The band was playing something upbeat now. People were laughing, drinking, making deals that would shape the city's skyline. Nobody looked at her. She was invisible. She had always been invisible. She started toward the exit, mapping a path that would avoid Marcus and his circle. She would get a cab, go to a hotel, figure out the rest tomorrow. But before she could reach the doors, a hand caught her arm. "Victoria, sweetheart." It was Eleanor Blackstone, the evening's hostess. Her smile was poison wrapped in silk. "Leaving so soon? The evening's just getting started." "I'm not feeling well." "That's a shame. You'll miss your husband's speech." Eleanor's eyes glittered with malicious delight. "He's been preparing it all week. I hear he has some lovely things to say about you." Victoria's stomach turned. "Speech? He didn't tell you? He's giving the keynote in 10 minutes. About the foundation. About family. About what a wonderful partner you've been." Eleanor squeezed her arm. "You really should stay. It would look so strange if his wife wasn't there to support him." Victoria wanted to run, but she could feel everyone watching. She could feel the trap closing around her. "Of course," she heard herself say. "I'll stay." The speech was worse than she imagined. Marcus took the stage to thunderous applause. He was magnetic up there, confident, charming, the kind of man people wanted to follow. "What a night," he began, flashing his perfect smile. "What a room. I look around and I see the people who make this city great. Leaders, visionaries, friends." The crowd murmured appreciation. The Ashford Foundation is built on one simple belief: that success means nothing if you don't lift others up. That legacy isn't about what you take, it's about what you give. He paused dramatically. And I couldn't do any of it without my incredible wife, Victoria. A spotlight swung toward her. Victoria froze. "There she is," Marcus said, gesturing toward her. "My rock, my partner, my biggest supporter." Applause. Everyone was looking at her, smiling, expecting her to smile back. She forced the corners of her mouth up. "Victoria gave up her own career to support mine," Marcus continued.
She used to make pottery, little bowls and vases, very charming stuff. I keep telling her she should sell them on Etsy, give herself a project while I'm at work." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Victoria felt her face burn. "But that's the thing about marriage, isn't it? It's about sacrifice. It's about knowing your role." He winked at the audience. "I handle the company."
Victoria handles, well, she's still figuring that out, but she's excellent at choosing curtains. More laughter. Victoria stood there, smiling, while her husband dismantled her in front of 500 people. "In all seriousness," Marcus said, his voice softening into practiced sincerity, "I'm grateful for Victoria. She keeps me grounded. She reminds me where I came from, even if she still can't tell the difference between a salad fork and a dessert fork." The biggest laugh yet. Victoria's smile felt carved from stone. "To my wife," Marcus raised his glass, "to family, and to another year of making a difference." The room erupted in applause. Marcus stepped down from the stage, accepting congratulations, shaking hands, basking in the adoration. He didn't look at Victoria once. She was going to leave. She didn't care about appearances anymore. She didn't care what anyone thought. She was going to walk out those doors and never look back. She started toward the exit. And that was when the doors at the far end of the ballroom opened. Two security guards stepped aside with unusual deference. Their postures changed, straighter, more alert. A man walked in. He was in his late 60s, with silver hair and a face carved by decades of intelligence and quiet authority. His suit was simple, charcoal gray. No flashy labels, no designer accessories. But something about him made the air in the room shift. People noticed. Conversations faltered. Heads turned. Eleanor Blackstone hurried toward him, her face cycling through confusion, concern, and then something Victoria had never seen on her before. Fear. The man handed her a card. Eleanor looked at it. The color drained from her face. "Mr. Sterling," Eleanor stammered, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "We weren't expecting you. Please, let me—" The man ignored her. His eyes were scanning the room, searching. Marcus had noticed the commotion. He straightened his jacket and started toward the newcomer, his predatory instincts activated. Fresh meat. A new target. Someone important to impress. "Good evening," Marcus said, extending his hand with his most charming smile. "Marcus Ashford. I don't believe we've had the pleasure." The silver-haired man looked at Marcus's outstretched hand. He didn't take it. His eyes, cold and blue as winter ice, lifted to meet Marcus's face. He said nothing. The silence stretched. 1 second. 2. 3. Marcus's smile faltered. His hand dropped awkwardly to his side. The man turned away from him as if he didn't exist. And then his eyes found Victoria. The coldness vanished. In its place was something else, something fierce, something protective. Victoria's heart stopped. She knew this man. She knew the set of his shoulders, the quiet strength in his jaw, the intelligence burning in those piercing blue eyes. It was her father, Henry Chen, the retired literature professor from Vermont, who lived in a modest colonial and spent his days gardening and volunteering at the library. Except Eleanor Blackstone had just called him Mr. Sterling, and he was looking at Victoria like a man who had come to burn something down. He began walking toward her. The crowd parted like water before a ship, and Victoria realized she had never known her father at all. Henry Chen crossed the ballroom floor like a man who owned it. And maybe he did. Victoria couldn't move, couldn't think,
couldn't reconcile the father she knew with the man walking toward her now. Her dad wore cardigans. He read poetry. He made scrambled eggs on Sunday mornings and hummed old jazz standards while he washed the dishes. He didn't make socialites turn pale. He didn't make security guards stand at attention. He didn't walk in the rooms full of billionaires like he belonged there. But here he was. The crowd parted around him. People stepped back without knowing why, responding to something primal, something that recognized power, even when it couldn't name it. Marcus was still standing where Henry had left him, his hand awkwardly at his side, his face cycling through confusion and wounded pride. Nobody dismissed Marcus Ashford. Nobody ignored his handshake. He was already recalibrating, already trying to figure out how to turn this situation to his advantage. Henry stopped in front of Victoria. Up close, he looked exactly like her father. The same gentle creases around his eyes, the same patient warmth in his expression. But there was something else now, something she had never seen before. A coldness beneath the surface, a fury held in check by decades of discipline. Mia. His voice was soft. He was the only person in the world who called her that. Her childhood nickname, the name he used when she scraped her knee or had a nightmare, or needed to know that everything would be okay. Dad. The word came out broken. What are you doing here? How did you... He reached out and gently brushed a tear from her cheek. She hadn't even realized she was crying again. I came as soon as I heard, he said quietly. Are you all right? I don't understand. Eleanor called you Mr. Sterling. Why would she... We'll talk about that later. His eyes searched her face, taking in the smeared makeup, the redness around her eyes, the trembling in her hands. His jaw tightened. Right now, I need to know. What did he do to you? Dad, it's complicated. It's not. His voice was still soft, but there was iron underneath. I saw you from across the room. I saw your face. I've never seen you look like that, Mia. Not once in 34 years. So I'm going to ask you again. What did he do? Victoria opened her mouth to answer, but before she could speak, Marcus appeared at her side. Victoria, darling. His voice was smooth, controlled, but she could hear the strain beneath it. I see you found a friend. Aren't you going to introduce us? Henry turned slowly to face him. The two men stood less than 3 feet apart. Marcus was taller, younger, broader. He was used to dominating rooms with his physical presence, but standing in front of Henry Chen, he somehow looked smaller, diminished. We've already met, Henry said. You offered me your hand. I declined. Marcus's smile flickered. Yes, well, I'm afraid I didn't catch your name. You didn't ask for it. Henry's voice was level, almost pleasant. You saw someone you thought was important and tried to make a connection. That's what you do, isn't it, Mr. Ashford? Collect people. Use them. Discard them when they're no longer valuable. Marcus's face hardened. I don't know who you think you are, but I know exactly who I am. The question is whether you do. Henry's eyes never wavered. Do you know who I am, Mr. Ashford? Do you have any idea whose daughter you've been humiliating for the past 6 years? Whose daughter? Marcus let out a short laugh. Victoria's father is a retired professor from Vermont. He reads books and grows tomatoes. I've met him exactly twice, at the wedding and at Christmas 4 years ago. He glanced at Victoria with something like pity. Is this some kind of joke? Did you pay an actor to... I am Victoria's father, Henry said. And I am also Arthur Sterling. The name landed like a bomb. Marcus's face went white. Around them, the people who had been pretending not to listen suddenly stopped pretending. A ripple of whispers spread outward through the crowd. Arthur Sterling. The Arthur Sterling. The ghost of Wall Street. The man behind the Sterling Fund. That's impossible, Marcus said. Arthur Sterling doesn't exist. He's a myth, a name on documents. Nobody's ever met him. You're meeting him now. This is insane. But Marcus's voice had lost its confidence. He was looking at Henry differently now. Looking at Eleanor Blackstone, who was hovering nearby with an expression of barely concealed terror. Looking at the security guards who had positioned themselves near the exits. Victoria, tell me this is a joke. Victoria shook her head slowly. I don't know. Dad, I don't understand. Sterling? The Sterling Fund? That's you? It's me, sweetheart. Henry's voice softened when he spoke to her, but his eyes stayed fixed on Marcus. There are things I never told you, things I wanted to protect you from. But I think it's time you knew the truth. What truth? Marcus demanded. What the hell is going on? Henry reached into his jacket and produced a single sheet of paper. He unfolded it slowly, deliberately, making Marcus wait. 6 years ago, Henry began, Ashford Development was dying. You had overextended into the Asian markets. Your Singapore project collapsed. Your creditors were circling. The banks had stopped returning your calls. You were 3 weeks away from bankruptcy and complete public humiliation. Marcus's face had gone gray. How do you know that? Because I was watching. I had been watching you for months, Mr. Ashford, from the moment you started dating my daughter. Henry's voice remained calm, almost conversational. I wanted to know what kind of man she had fallen in love with. What I found was troubling. Your business was failing. Your ethics were questionable. Your treatment of previous partners, both romantic and professional, showed a pattern of narcissism and cruelty. You investigated me? Thoroughly. Henry folded the paper and slid it back into his jacket. I advised Victoria against marrying you. She didn't listen. She was in love, and she believed you were the man you pretended to be. I couldn't stop her, but I could protect her. Victoria felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. Protect me how? The week before your wedding, Ashford Development received an anonymous investment, $300 million, routed through a Swiss holding company. No conditions, no strings, just enough capital to pay off the creditors and restart operations. Henry paused. That money came from me. Marcus staggered back a step. No. Over the next 6 years, the Sterling Fund invested an additional $700 million in your company. Quietly, strategically, always at moments when you needed it most. The waterfront development, the Chelsea project, the Hong Kong expansion that you thought was your genius, but was actually funded entirely by my money. Henry's voice hardened. I own 51% of Ashford Development, Mr. Ashford. I have for years. You've been working for me this whole time, and you didn't even know it. The color had completely drained from Marcus's face. He looked like a man watching his entire world collapse. Why? The word came out as a whisper. Why would you do that? Because my daughter said she loved you. Henry's voice cracked slightly on the word daughter, the first sign of emotion he had shown. Because she believed you would take care of her. Because I trusted her judgment, even when I didn't trust you. I wanted her to be happy, Mr. Ashford. I wanted her to have the life she chose. So I made sure your company survived. I made sure you had the success you craved. I made sure my daughter would never have to worry about money or security. He stepped closer to Marcus, and his voice dropped to something low and dangerous. And you repaid that trust by treating her like garbage, by mocking her in public, by parading your mistress in front of 500 people while my daughter stood alone and watched. Marcus's mouth opened and closed. He looked at Victoria, desperation creeping into his eyes. Victoria, I didn't know. I had no idea.
If I had known who your father was, if you had known, you would have treated her differently, Henry cut in. That's exactly the point. You should have treated her well because she's a human being, because she's your wife, because she loved you, not because her father might be someone important. This is crazy. You can't just walk in here and... I can do whatever I want, Mr. Ashford. I own your company. I own this building, actually. The Whitney leases it from a holding company that I control. Henry smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I've spent 30 years building an empire precisely so that I would never have to bow to men like you. And tonight, you're going to learn what that means. Marcus turned to Victoria, his expression shifting to something that might have been genuine fear. Victoria, please, talk to him. Whatever I've done, we can work it out. I love you. I've always loved you. Victoria stared at the man she had married, the man who had told her she was nothing without him, the man who had danced with his mistress while she watched, the man who had stood on stage and called her a joke. Do you? She asked quietly. Do you love me, Marcus? Or do you love what I represent? The simple artist who made you feel cultured. The provincial wife who made you look grounded. The little project you could mold and shape and show off at parties. That's not fair. Isn't it? Because I just spent the last 3 hours being humiliated by you. You told 500 people that my pottery was a joke. You said I couldn't tell the difference between forks. You danced with Serena Walsh like I wasn't even in the room. Serena is nothing. She means nothing. She told me you're planning to divorce me. She showed me the texts, Marcus. Can't wait to be free of her. You're the only one I've ever loved. Victoria's voice was shaking now, but not with sadness, with anger. Were you ever going to tell me? Or were you just going to serve me papers one day and act surprised when I was blindsided? Marcus's face twisted. She shouldn't have done that. She had no right. She had no right. What about you, Marcus? What about the 18 months of lies, the apartment in Tribeca, the trip to the Maldives that you said was a conference? Victoria, you told her about my dress. Victoria's voice broke. You showed her the dress I designed, the dress I was so proud of, and you laughed about it together. She told me. She told me everything. For the first time, Marcus seemed to realize that the situation was beyond salvaging. He looked around the ballroom at the crowd of people who were no longer pretending not to listen. His colleagues, his investors, his friends. They were all watching him with expressions ranging from shock to contempt. His empire was crumbling, and everyone could see it. Arthur. He turned back to Henry, using the name for the first time. Mr. Sterling, whatever you want to call yourself. Let's talk about this privately. I'm sure we can reach an understanding. I know I've made mistakes, but... Mistakes? Henry's voice was ice. You call this mistakes? He reached into his jacket again and pulled out a thick envelope. He handed it to Victoria. Open it. Victoria's hands trembled as she unsealed the envelope and pulled out a stack of photographs and documents. She flipped through them, and each page was another knife in her chest. Marcus and Serena in a restaurant, his hand on her thigh. Marcus and Serena on a beach, clearly the Maldives trip he had claimed was Singapore. Marcus and Serena entering an apartment building in Tribeca. Text messages, emails, bank transfers, and then something worse, something that made Victoria's blood run cold. What is this? She whispered, holding up a document. Henry's jaw tightened. That is a memo from Serena Walsh to her superior at Wellington Partners, dated 14 months ago. It details Marcus's acquisition strategy for the waterfront project and includes confidential financial projections
that were leaked from Ashford Development's internal servers. Victoria looked at her father, not understanding. "I don't—" "Serena Walsh isn't just your husband's mistress," Henry said. "She's a corporate spy. Wellington Partners is a competitor of Ashford Development. They've been trying to undercut Marcus's deals for years, and they've been succeeding because Serena has been feeding them inside information for the past 18 months. Every deal Marcus has lost, every competitor who outbid him at the last minute, every project that fell through unexpectedly, it was all because of her." Marcus's face went from white to green. "That's not possible." "It's not only possible, it's documented." Henry pulled another document from the envelope. "This is an affidavit from a junior analyst at Wellington Partners, a young man named Thomas Reeves. Serena blackmailed him into helping her access your systems. He's agreed to cooperate with federal investigators in exchange for immunity." "Federal investigators?" "The FBI has been building a case for months, Mr. Ashford. Corporate espionage, wire fraud, securities violations. Serena Walsh and her superior, a man named David Chen, no relation, will both be indicted within the week." Henry paused. "The only question is, how much of the blame will fall on you?" Marcus was shaking now, actually shaking. "I didn't know. I had no idea she was—" "You had no idea because you weren't thinking with your brain." Henry's voice was brutal. "You were so busy betraying your wife that you didn't notice your mistress was betraying you. You brought a spy into your bedroom, gave her access to your files, your computer, your entire operation, because you thought you were so smart, so untouchable, so above consequences." "Arthur, please!" Marcus's voice cracked. "I'll do anything, whatever you want. Just tell me how to fix this." "There's nothing to fix. The board of Ashford Development will receive a full report tomorrow morning. As majority shareholder, I will be calling an emergency meeting to discuss your removal as CEO. Given the security breach you've caused, the decision should be unanimous." Henry straightened his cuffs. "Your career is over, Mr. Ashford. Your reputation is destroyed. Your mistress is going to prison. And depending on what the investigation uncovers, you might be joining her." "You can't do this." "I've already done it." Henry turned to Victoria and extended his hand. "Come on, sweetheart. We're leaving." Victoria looked at her father's hand, then at Marcus. Her husband, the man she had loved for 6 years, was standing in the middle of the ballroom, surrounded by the wreckage of everything he had built. His face was ashen. His shoulders were slumped. He looked smaller than she had ever seen him. Part of her, a small part, felt something like pity. But then she remembered. The bathroom, the dance floor, the speech, the necklace Serena had helped him pick out, the years of small cruelties and casual dismissals, the pottery she had given up, the friends she had lost, the person she had stopped being. She took her father's hand. "Victoria, wait!" Marcus lunged forward, grabbing her arm. "You can't leave. Not like this. We need to talk. We need to—" "Let go of her." Henry's voice was quiet, but something in it made Marcus freeze. "Take your hand off my daughter. Now." Marcus released her arm like it had burned him. Victoria looked at her husband one last time. "Goodbye, Marcus." "Victoria, please. I made mistakes. I know I made mistakes. But I can change. We can work through this. Think about everything we've built together." "I am thinking about it." Her voice was steady now, calm. "I'm thinking about how I gave up everything for you. My art, my friends, my identity. I'm thinking about how you made me feel small and stupid and worthless every single day for 6 years. I'm thinking about how you stood on that stage tonight and made me a punchline in front of everyone I know.
I didn't mean.
Yes, you did. She pulled her hand free from her father's grip and stepped toward Marcus. You meant every word. You always have. You never loved me, Marcus. You loved having a wife who made you look good. A wife you could control. A wife who was too grateful for her rescue from obscurity to ever fight back. Her voice hardened. But I'm done being grateful. I'm done being small. And I'm done being your wife. She turned and walked toward the exit. The crowd parted for her, just as it had parted for her father. But this time, they weren't parting out of deference to power.
They were parting out of respect for a woman who had just reclaimed herself in front of all of them. Henry fell into step beside her. Behind them, Marcus's voice rose in desperation. Victoria! Victoria, come back! We can fix this! Victoria! She didn't turn around. The security guards opened the doors for them, and Victoria Chen walked out of the ballroom, out of her marriage, and out of the gilded cage that had held her for 6 years. The cool night air hit her face like a blessing. She was shaking. Her hands, her legs, her whole body trembled with adrenaline and shock and something that felt terrifyingly like freedom. A black sedan was waiting at the curb. No flashy logos, no vanity plates. Just quiet efficiency, like everything about her father apparently was. A driver held the door open. Victoria stopped at the edge of the sidewalk and looked at Henry. Her father, Arthur Sterling, the man she thought she knew and clearly didn't know at all. Dad. I know. He put a hand on her shoulder. I know you have questions, a lot of them, and I promise I'll answer every single one. But right now, I need you to get in the car. Can you do that for me? She nodded. She got in the car. Henry slid in beside her, and the driver closed the door. A moment later, they were pulling away from the Whitney, away from the gala, away from everything Victoria had thought her life was supposed to be. She watched the museum grow smaller in the rear window. Somewhere inside, Marcus was still standing in the ruins of his reputation. Somewhere inside, Serena Walsh was realizing that her 18-month con had just collapsed. Somewhere inside, 500 of New York's most powerful people were already reshuffling their alliances, already distancing themselves from the disgraced CEO, already crafting the stories they would tell about the night they watched Arthur Sterling destroy Marcus Ashford with nothing but words and documents. Victoria turned away from the window. The Sterling Fund, she said quietly. How long? 32 years. Henry's voice was gentle. I started it before you were born, before I met your mother. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted you to have a normal life, a real life. I watched what money did to other families, how it poisoned children, made them entitled, disconnected them from the world. I didn't want that for you, Mia. I wanted you to know who you were without the weight of a fortune defining you. But you let me marry him. You paid for his company. You watched him treat me like that for 6 years. I didn't watch. Henry's voice cracked. I had people keeping an eye on things, yes. But I didn't know how bad it had gotten. You never told me. Every time I called, every time I visited, you said everything was fine. You said you were happy. Victoria closed her eyes. I didn't want you to worry. I'm your father. Worrying is my job. He reached over and took her hand. I should have pushed harder. I should have seen through the lies. I failed you, Mia. I'm so sorry. You didn't fail me. She squeezed his hand. I failed myself. I let him change me. I let him make me small. That's not your fault. They drove in silence for a while. The city lights blurred past the windows. The streets were quieter now, the late-night traffic thinning as they headed uptown. Finally,
Victoria asked the question that had been burning in her mind since the moment her father walked through those ballroom doors. What happens now? Henry turned to look at her. In the dim light of the car, he looked older than she remembered. Tired. That depends on you, he said. What do you want to happen? Victoria thought about the question. Really thought about it. For 6 years, she hadn't been allowed to want anything. Her desires had been secondary. Background noise. Something to be managed and minimized and eventually forgotten. But now, sitting in the back of this car, watching the city she had learned to hate slide past the windows, she let herself want. I want to make pottery again, she said quietly. I want to get my hands dirty. I want to create something that's mine. Henry smiled. Then that's what you'll do. And I want to understand. All of it. Who you really are. What the Sterling Fund is. Why you kept it secret for so long. She met his eyes. I want to know my father. The real one. You will. He squeezed her hand. I promise. The car turned onto a quiet street lined with brownstones. It stopped in front of a beautiful 4-story building that Victoria had never seen before. Where are we? Home, Henry said. Or at least, it can be. For as long as you need. Victoria looked at the brownstone. Warm light glowed in the windows. A small garden grew in the front yard, even in the middle of Manhattan. It looked nothing like the cold, minimalist penthouse she had shared with Marcus. It looked like a place where someone could breathe. I had it prepared this afternoon, Henry explained. When my people told me what was happening at the gala, I knew you wouldn't be going back to the penthouse tonight. Everything you need is inside. Clothes, toiletries, your ceramic tools. Victoria's head snapped toward him. My tools? I had them collected from your studio this afternoon. The studio Marcus turned into a storage room. Henry's voice hardened briefly, then softened again. Your wheel is set up in the basement. It has good light. I thought you might want to work. For the first time since the nightmare began, Victoria felt tears that weren't from pain. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you, Dad. Henry opened the car door and stepped out. He offered her his hand, just as he had in the ballroom. Victoria took it. Together, they walked up the steps of the brownstone. And somewhere across the city, in a ballroom that had become a crime scene of reputation and ambition, Marcus Ashford was still standing alone, surrounded by the ashes of everything he thought he had built, finally understanding what it felt like to be invisible. Victoria didn't sleep that night. She sat in the window seat of the brownstone's guest bedroom, watching the sky slowly lighten from black to gray to the pale gold of early morning. Her mind kept replaying the gala like a film on loop. Marcus's face when he realized who her father was. Serena's triumphant smile turning to ash. The weight of 500 stairs as she walked out of the ballroom. Around 3 a.m, she had gone down to the basement. Her father hadn't exaggerated. Everything was there. Her pottery wheel, the same one she had bought with her first gallery sale 12 years ago. Her kiln, her tools, still wrapped in the soft leather roll she had kept them in. Bags of clay that smelled like earth and possibility. She had stood in the middle of the space for a long time, just breathing. Then she had gone back upstairs, made a cup of tea, and waited for the sun to rise. Now, with morning light filling the brownstone, she heard footsteps on the stairs. A moment later, Henry appeared in the doorway of her room, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. I thought you might be awake, he said. I don't think I could sleep if I tried. He handed her a cup and settled into the armchair across from her. For a moment, they just sat together, the silence comfortable in a way it hadn't been for years. You have questions, Henry said finally. About 1 million of them. Start with the first one.
Victoria wrapped her hands around the warm cup. Who are you, really? Not the professor, not the quiet dad who reads poetry. Who is Arthur Sterling? Henry took a long breath. Arthur Sterling is a name I created 40 years ago. A shell, a mask. I needed it because the things I was building required anonymity. The Sterling Fund started as a small investment firm, just me and two partners working out of a rented office in Boston. We had a theory about technology stocks, about where the world was going. We were right. How right? Right enough that by the time you were born, I was worth more than most countries. He said it simply, without pride. But I had already seen what that kind of money did to people. The corruption, the paranoia, the way it poisoned every relationship. So I made a choice. I would keep the fortune separate from my life. Arthur Sterling would exist on paper, in legal documents and corporate structures. But in the real world, I would just be Henry Chen, a professor, a father, a man who grew tomatoes and read too many books. And Mom? Did she know? Henry's face softened with old grief. Victoria's mother had died when she was 12. Cancer, quick and brutal. She knew everything. From the beginning. It was her idea, actually, to raise you away from the money. She said she had seen too many wealthy children grow up empty. She wanted you to have a real childhood, real problems, real achievements that you earned yourself. He smiled sadly. She would have been so proud of you, Mia. Your art, your gallery, everything you built on your own. Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. I gave it all up. For Marcus. You made a choice. You followed your heart. There's no shame in that. I was stupid. You were in love. They're not the same thing. Henry leaned forward. Your mother fell in love with me when I was nobody. A grad student with holes in his sweaters and big ideas. She didn't care about money. She cared about who I was. That's the kind of love I wanted you to find. Instead, I found Marcus. Marcus found you. There's a difference. Henry's voice hardened. He saw a talented, beautiful, successful woman and decided to collect her, to possess her. That's not love. That's acquisition. Victoria set down her coffee cup. Why didn't you stop me? If you knew what he was, why did you let me marry him? Because you're not a child. You're my daughter, and I love you. But I can't live your life for you. I can't make your choices. All I could do was be ready when you needed me. He paused. And you never asked for help, not once. Every time I called, you said everything was fine. You were so determined to make it work. I was ashamed. The words came out before Victoria could stop them. I was ashamed to admit that my perfect life wasn't perfect, that the man I chose was cruel, that I had made a mistake. There's no shame in making mistakes, Mia. The only shame is in refusing to learn from them. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, the city was waking up. Traffic sounds drifted through the windows. Somewhere, a dog barked. What happens now? Victoria asked. With Marcus, with the company. Henry checked his watch. In about 2 hours, the Board of Ashford Development will receive a comprehensive report detailing the security breach, the corporate espionage, and Marcus's role in enabling it. I've called an emergency meeting for this afternoon. By 5 o'clock, he will no longer be CEO. And Serena? The FBI executed a search warrant at her apartment this morning. She and David Chen will both be arrested by the end of the day. Victoria absorbed this. It all felt surreal. 12 hours ago, she had been standing in a bathroom with mascara running down her face, thinking her life was over.
Now Marcus was about to lose everything, and Serena was going to prison. "Is this real?" she asked quietly. "Is any of this actually happening?" "It's real." Henry reached over and took her hand. "I know it feels like a dream, or a nightmare, but it's real, and you're going to be okay. I promise." The doorbell rang. Henry frowned. "I wasn't expecting anyone." "Should I? Stay here. I'll handle it." He stood and walked downstairs. Victoria heard the front door open, heard voices, and then footsteps coming back up the stairs. Henry reappeared in the doorway. His expression was unreadable. "You have a visitor." "Who?" "Marcus." Victoria's blood went cold. "What?" "He's downstairs. He wants to talk to you." Henry's jaw was tight. "I told him you weren't receiving visitors. He said he'll wait on the sidewalk until you agree to see him." "How did he even know I was here?" "He must have had someone follow us last night." Henry's hands curled into fists. "I can have him removed. I can call the police. Just say the word." Victoria thought about it. Part of her, a large part, wanted to never see Marcus Ashford again, wanted to hide in this brownstone and let her father's lawyers handle everything. But another part of her, a smaller part that was growing stronger by the minute, knew that she needed to face him. Not for closure, not for reconciliation, but because she needed to prove to herself that she wasn't afraid of him anymore. "I'll see him," she said. "Are you sure?" "No, but I'm going to do it anyway." Henry studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "I'll be in the next room. If he raises his voice, if he touches you, if he does anything that makes you uncomfortable, I will end him, legally and financially. Do you understand?" "I understand." "Good." He turned to leave, then paused. "I'm proud of you, Mia. I want you to know that." Victoria felt her heart swell. "Thanks, Dad." Henry went downstairs. A moment later, Victoria heard the front door open again, heard muffled voices, and then footsteps on the stairs. Marcus appeared in the doorway. He looked terrible. His tuxedo from last night was rumpled, his bow tie hanging loose around his neck. His face was pale and unshaven, his eyes red-rimmed and desperate. He looked like a man who hadn't slept, hadn't changed, hadn't stopped moving since she left him standing alone in that ballroom. "Victoria," his voice cracked. "Thank God." "You shouldn't be here, Marcus." "I had to see you. I had to explain." He took a step into the room, then stopped when he saw her expression. "Please, just give me 5 minutes." "You have 3. He swallowed hard. "I made mistakes. I know that. I was cruel and I was selfish and I took you for granted. But I never meant to hurt you, Victoria. I swear I didn't. You humiliated me in front of 500 people. You danced with your mistress while I watched. You told everyone my pottery was a joke. I was wrong. I was so wrong. I don't know what I was thinking." "You were thinking exactly what you always think, Marcus. That I was beneath you. That I didn't deserve respect. That you could treat me however you wanted because I had nowhere else to go. That's not true, isn't it?" Victoria stood up from the window seat. "When did you start sleeping with Serena?" Marcus's face flushed. "Victoria, when?" 18 months ago. "Was it the first time you cheated on me?" He looked away. "No." The word hit her like a punch. She had suspected, of course. There had been signs over the years. Late nights, unexplained charges, the way he sometimes looked at her like he was already thinking about someone else. But hearing him admit it was different. "How many?" she asked. "Victoria, please, this isn't—" "How many, Marcus?" He was silent for a long moment. "I don't know. A few. They didn't mean anything. They meant something to me. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. Every time you touched another woman, you were telling me that I wasn't enough, that I didn't matter, that our marriage was a joke. That's not what I was saying. I love you. I've always loved you. You don't know what love is.
Victoria walked toward him, her eyes locked on his face. Love isn't control. Love isn't criticism. Love isn't making someone feel small so you can feel big. What you felt for me wasn't love, Marcus. It was ownership. That's not fair. Fair? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to talk about fair? I gave up my career for you. I gave up my friends. I gave up my art, the thing that made me who I am, because you told me it wasn't befitting of an Ashford. I shrunk myself down to fit into your world, and you still weren't satisfied. You still needed to tear me down every chance you got. I didn't realize. Yes, you did. You knew exactly what you were doing. Every criticism, every dismissal, every time you forgot to introduce me, or made me the punchline of your jokes. You were breaking me down on purpose, Marcus, keeping me small so I would never leave. Marcus's face crumpled. I'm sorry. God, Victoria, I'm so sorry. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but please, give me another chance. We can start over. We can go to therapy, work on our issues. I'll be better. I swear I'll be better. It's too late for that. It's not. It's not too late. We can fix this. He stepped toward her, reaching for her hand. I'll give up Serena. I already have. I'll never see her again. I'll do whatever you want. Just please, please don't leave me. Victoria pulled her hand away. You're not sorry for what you did, Marcus. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry your company is about to collapse. You're sorry that the man you've been mocking for 6 years turned out to be the one person who could destroy you. That's not... If my father was actually a retired professor with no money and no power, would you be standing here right now? Would you be begging for another chance? Or would you be at your lawyer's office, figuring out how to take everything I have in the divorce? Marcus opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. His silence was the only answer she needed. That's what I thought. Victoria walked to the door and opened it. Get out. Victoria, please. I love you. No, you don't. And I don't think I love you anymore either. She met his eyes, and for the first time, she felt no fear, no sadness, just a calm, clear certainty. I think I stopped loving you a long time ago. I just didn't want to admit it. You don't mean that. I've never meant anything more in my life. She gestured toward the hallway. Leave, Marcus. Go home. Call your lawyers. Do whatever you need to do to prepare for what's coming. But don't come here again. Don't call me. Don't try to contact me. As far as I'm concerned, our marriage ended the moment you told me I was nothing without you. Marcus's face went from desperate to angry in a heartbeat. This is insane. You can't just throw away 6 years of marriage because of one bad night. One bad night, Victoria laughed. Marcus, every night has been bad. Every day. Every moment of the past 6 years. I just didn't let myself see it because I was so desperate to believe that I hadn't made a mistake. Your father is filling your head with lies. He's manipulating you. My father is the only person who's ever told me the truth. The only person who's ever loved me for who I am, not what I could do for him. Victoria's voice hardened. Now get out of my house before I call the police. Marcus stood frozen, his face cycling through emotions. Anger, disbelief, fear. And then, finally, something that looked almost like acceptance. Fine, he said quietly. Fine. I'll go. But this isn't over, Victoria. Your father might own my company, but he doesn't own me. I'll fight this. I'll fight all of it. That's your choice. And when I win, when I get everything back, you're going to regret this. You're going to wish you had stood by me." Victoria smiled. It was the first real smile she had felt in years. "No, Marcus, I'm not." He stared at her for a long moment, searching her face for something, some crack in her armor, some sign of the meek, compliant wife he had spent 6 years creating. He didn't find it. Without another word, he turned and walked out of the room, down the stairs, and out of the brownstone. Victoria stood in the doorway, listening to his footsteps fade. She heard the front door slam, heard a car engine start, heard it drive away. She let out a breath she didn't know she had been holding. Henry appeared at the bottom of the stairs, looking up at her with concern. "Are you okay?" Victoria considered the question, really considered it. She thought about everything she had lost, her marriage, her home, her sense of security, the life she had built, even if it had been built on lies. But then she thought about everything she had gained, her freedom, her voice, her art, her father, the real one, not the half-truth she had known for 34 years. "Yeah," she said finally. "I think I am." Henry smiled. "Good, because I have something to show you." He led her downstairs, through the kitchen, and into the basement studio. Victoria had seen it in the dark last night, but in the morning light, it was transformed. Sunlight streamed through high windows, illuminating the pottery wheel, the kiln, the shelves lined with her old tools. And in the center of the room, on a large wooden table, was a block of fresh clay. "I had it delivered this morning," Henry said. "I thought you might want to make something." Victoria walked to the table and placed her hands on the clay. It was cool and smooth, full of potential, full of possibility. She hadn't touched clay in over a year. Marcus had told her it was a waste of time, a mess, something that didn't fit the image of an Ashford wife. But Marcus wasn't here anymore, and she could do whatever she wanted. She looked at her father, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." "You don't have to thank me, Mia. You never have to thank me for being your father." He kissed her forehead and left her alone in the studio. Victoria stood for a long time, just looking at the clay. Then she rolled up her sleeves, sat down at the wheel, and began to work. The clay was cold at first, resistant, but as she worked it with her hands, as she felt it soften and respond to her touch, something inside her began to shift. The tension in her shoulders released. The knot in her stomach loosened. The constant, low-level anxiety that had been her companion for 6 years began to fade. She didn't know what she was making. She didn't have a plan or a design or a vision. She just let her hands move, let the clay take shape, let herself create for the first time in longer than she could remember. Hours passed. The light in the studio shifted from morning gold to afternoon white. Her back ached. Her fingers were raw. Clay was caked under her fingernails and smeared across her face. She had never felt more alive. When she finally stopped, she looked at what she had made. It was a vase, imperfect, lopsided, not her best work, not even close. But it was hers. She had made it with her own hands, in her own time, for her own reasons. And it was beautiful. Victoria sat back and laughed, really laughed, from deep in her belly, the way she hadn't laughed in years. She was covered in clay. She was exhausted. She was technically homeless, jobless, and in the middle of what would probably be the ugliest divorce in New York history. But she was free, and that was worth more than all the diamonds and penthouses and charity galas in the world. She stood up from the wheel, wiped her hands on her ruined dress, and walked upstairs to tell her father about her first piece. The first piece of her new life. The first piece of Victoria Chen, artist, daughter, woman. Not Mrs. Marcus Ashford. Not anymore. Never again. 3 weeks later, Victoria stood in her studio watching the morning news on a small television Henry had installed in the corner. Marcus Ashford's face filled the screen. He looked nothing like the man she had married. The confident jaw was slack. The perfectly styled hair was disheveled. The designer suit that had always fit him like armor now hung loose on his frame, as if he had lost weight in the weeks since the gala. He was walking out of the Ashford Development headquarters for the last time, flanked by security guards, carrying a single cardboard box. The reporter's voice cut over the footage. Former CEO Marcus Ashford was officially removed from his position today, following a unanimous vote by the company's board of directors. The decision comes after weeks of revelations about a massive corporate espionage scandal that has rocked the real estate industry. Victoria turned up the volume. Ashford, once considered one of New York's most powerful developers, now faces potential criminal charges related to the security breach that allowed confidential company information to be leaked to competitors. His former associate, Serena Walsh, was arrested last week along with Wellington Partners executive David Chen. Both are facing federal indictment for corporate espionage, wire fraud, and securities violations. The footage cut to Serena being led out of her Tribeca apartment in handcuffs. Victoria felt nothing. She had expected to feel satisfaction, vindication, maybe even a little bit of cruel pleasure at watching the woman who had tormented her being humiliated on national television. But there was nothing. Just a hollow emptiness where all that anger used to live. Victoria. She turned to find Henry standing in the doorway of the studio, a cup of coffee in each hand. "You're watching that again," he said. "I can't help it. It's everywhere." "Turn it off." He handed her a cup. "It's not healthy to keep reliving it." "I'm not reliving it. I'm just—" She searched for the right word. "Processing." Henry set his cup down and gently took the remote from her hand. He clicked off the television, and Marcus's face disappeared. "There's nothing left to process," he said quietly. "It's over. Marcus lost his company. Serena is going to prison. The divorce papers are filed. You're free." "Am I?" "What do you mean?" Victoria walked to her pottery wheel and sat down. The clay she had been working on that morning was still wet, still waiting for her hands. "I thought I would feel different," she admitted. "I thought when it was all over, when Marcus got what he deserved, I would feel, I don't know, healed, fixed. But I don't feel any of that. I just feel tired." Henry pulled up a stool and sat across from her. "Healing doesn't happen because someone else gets punished. It happens because you do the work. You rebuild. You create something new." "I know. I'm trying." "I can see that." He nodded toward the shelves along the wall, which were now lined with pieces Victoria had made over the past 3 weeks. Vases, bowls, abstract sculptures. Some beautiful, some misshapen. All of them raw and honest in ways her older work had never been. "You've been productive." "It's the only thing that helps. When I'm working, I don't think about him. I don't think about any of it. I just create." "That's good. That's healthy." "Is it? Or am I just hiding from everything?" Henry reached over and took her hand. His fingers were warm and steady, the same hands that had held hers when she learned to ride a bike, when she graduated from college, when she walked down the aisle toward a man who would spend 6 years trying to destroy her. "There's a difference between hiding and healing," he said. "Hiding is pretending the pain doesn't exist. Healing is acknowledging the pain and choosing to build something better anyway." "You're not hiding, Mia. You're rebuilding. Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. I don't know how to do this, Dad. I don't know how to be alone. I've been with Marcus for so long, I forgot who I was before him. Then this is your chance to find out. The doorbell rang. Henry frowned. I'm not expecting anyone. Neither am I. He stood up and walked toward the stairs. Victoria followed, wiping clay from her hands onto her apron. At the front door, Henry checked the security camera mounted above the entrance. His expression darkened. It's Evelyn Reed, he said, my lawyer, and she doesn't look happy. He opened the door. Evelyn Reed was a sharp, elegant woman in her 50s, with steel gray hair and the kind of face that suggested she had seen everything and was surprised by nothing. She was Henry's personal attorney, the woman who had been managing the legal aspects of Victoria's divorce. Today, she looked worried. Henry, Victoria, I'm sorry to drop by unannounced, but we need to talk. What's wrong? Victoria asked. Evelyn stepped inside, clutching a leather briefcase to her chest. Marcus filed a countersuit this morning. We expected that, Henry said. He's been making noise about contesting the prenup for weeks. This isn't about the prenup. Evelyn's voice was tight. He's suing Victoria directly, and you, Henry. He's claiming fraud, emotional distress, and intentional interference with his business relationships. He's asking for $50 million in damages. Victoria felt the blood drain from her face. $50 million? He's also filed a motion to freeze Victoria's assets pending the outcome of the lawsuit. If the judge grants it, you won't be able to access any of the accounts Henry set up for you. On what grounds? Henry demanded. He's claiming that you deliberately concealed your identity to manipulate him into marriage. That Victoria knew about your wealth all along and participated in a scheme to defraud him. Evelyn opened her briefcase and pulled out a stack of documents. His lawyers are good, Henry. Very good. And very expensive. Someone is funding this. Who? We don't know yet, but whoever it is has deep pockets. Evelyn handed the documents to Henry. There's more. He's given an interview to a reporter at the Post. It's running tomorrow. He's painting himself as the victim, the hard-working entrepreneur who is trapped by a scheming billionaire and his gold-digging daughter. Victoria felt like she had been punched. Gold-digging? I never took anything from him. I never asked for anything. That's not the story he's telling. Evelyn's face was grim. He's saying you deliberately targeted him because you knew he was vulnerable, that your entire relationship was a long con designed to give your father control of his company. That's insane. We met by chance at a gallery. He pursued me. I know, but by the time his interview runs, half of New York will believe his version. Evelyn turned to Henry. You need to prepare for this, both of you. This isn't just a legal battle anymore. It's a war for public opinion. Henry's face had gone hard. The gentle father Victoria had known her whole life was gone, replaced by something colder, something dangerous. He wants a war, Henry said quietly. I'll give him one. Henry, no. I've been patient. I've been measured. I removed him from his company. I exposed his mistress. I thought that would be enough. I thought he would have the sense to walk away and rebuild his life somewhere else. His voice dropped to a whisper. But if he wants to drag my daughter through the mud, if he wants to paint her as a criminal, then I will destroy him so completely that his own mother won't recognize his name. Victoria had never heard her father speak like this. It frightened her. Dad, stop. He turned to look at her. This isn't you, she said. This isn't who you are. You don't know what I'm capable of when someone threatens my family. Maybe not, but I know what I'm capable of. Victoria straightened her spine. And I'm not going to let Marcus turn me into a victim again. Not in court, not in the press,
Not anywhere. Evelyn looked between them. What are you suggesting? I want to give my own interview. Tell my side of the story before his version takes hold. Victoria, that's risky. Anything you say could be used against you in court. I don't care. I spent 6 years being silent. 6 years letting Marcus control the narrative. I'm done being quiet. She looked at her father. You can fight him with lawyers and money and corporate warfare. But I'm going to fight him with the truth. My truth. The story of what he actually did to me. Henry studied her face for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. All right, he said. If that's what you want, we'll make it happen. I know a journalist, Evelyn said carefully. Rebecca Torres at the Times. She's fair, thorough, and she hates hit pieces. If anyone can tell your story the right way, it's her. Set it up, Victoria said, as soon as possible. Are you sure about this? Once you go public, there's no going back. Victoria thought about the past 3 weeks, the clay under her fingernails, the pieces lining her studio walls, the slow, painful process of remembering who she was. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The interview was scheduled for 2 days later. Rebecca Torres arrived at the brownstone at exactly 10 in the morning. She was younger than Victoria expected, maybe mid-30s, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and eyes that missed nothing. Thank you for agreeing to this, Rebecca said as they settled into the living room. I know it's not easy. Easy stopped being an option a long time ago. Rebecca pulled out a recorder and set it on the coffee table between them. I want you to know that I've done my research. I know what Marcus is claiming. I know the narrative he's trying to build. But I'm not interested in his narrative. I'm interested in the truth. So am I. Then let's start at the beginning. Rebecca leaned forward. How did you meet Marcus Ashford? Victoria took a deep breath, and she began to talk. She talked about the gallery in Vermont, about the man who had seemed so charming, so interested, so different from anyone she had ever met. She talked about the whirlwind courtship, the proposal, the wedding that felt like a fairy tale. Then she talked about what came after. The small criticisms that grew into constant attacks. The isolation from friends and family. The slow erasure of everything that made her who she was. The pottery studio that became a storage room. The opinions that became embarrassing. The woman who became a ghost in her own marriage. She talked about Serena, about the bathroom, about the dance floor, about the speech that had humiliated her in front of 500 people. She talked about her father's arrival, about the revelation of his true identity, about the choice she had made to walk out of that ballroom and never look back. She talked for 3 hours. When she finished, Rebecca turned off the recorder and sat in silence for a long moment. I've interviewed a lot of people, she said finally. Politicians, celebrities, criminals, but I've never heard anyone speak with as much clarity about their own pain as you just did. I've had a lot of time to think about it. It shows. Rebecca gathered her notes. I want you to know that I'm going to write this fairly. I'm going to include Marcus's side. I'm going to present the facts as objectively as I can. But I'm also going to make sure that your voice is heard, that your story is told. That's all I'm asking. Rebecca stood to leave, then paused at the door. One more question, off the record. Okay. Do you regret it, marrying him? Victoria thought about it, really thought about it. I regret losing myself, she said finally. I regret giving up my art and my friends and my voice. But I don't regret the marriage itself, because without it, I never would have learned how strong I actually am. I never would have found my way back to myself."
Rebecca nodded slowly.
"That's a good answer. It's the truth. I know. That's what makes it good." The article ran 4 days later. It was the cover story of the Sunday Times magazine. The headline read, "The Woman Behind the Scandal. Victoria Chen Speaks." Victoria read it 3 times. Rebecca had done exactly what she promised. She had presented both sides. She had included Marcus's claims, his version of events, his accusations of fraud and manipulation. But she had also included Victoria's story, her pain, her journey, her truth. And somehow, in the careful balance of facts and quotes and context, Victoria's truth had come through louder. The response was immediate. Within hours, the story was trending on social media. Within a day, other outlets were picking it up, running their own pieces, interviewing people who had witnessed the gala or known Victoria before she became Mrs. Ashford. Within a week, the narrative had completely shifted.
Marcus wasn't the victim anymore. He was the villain. Calls flooded Evelyn's office from women's organizations wanting Victoria to speak at their events, from galleries wanting to show her work, from publishers wanting her to write a book, and from Marcus's lawyers wanting to settle. "They're offering to drop the countersuit," Evelyn told her over the phone. "In exchange, they want you to sign a non-disclosure agreement. No more interviews, no book, no public statements about Marcus ever again." What do you think? I think they're scared. The public opinion tide has turned against him completely. His investors are abandoning him. His friends won't return his calls. He's toxic, and he knows it. So I should take the deal? That's your choice, but if you ask me, I'd tell them to go to hell. Victoria smiled. I like the way you think. She hung up and walked down to her studio. The shelves were fuller now. Rows of pieces she had made over the past month, each one different, each one a step on her journey back to herself. Some were beautiful. Some were ugly. Some were so raw and painful that she could barely look at them. But they were all hers. She sat down at her wheel and began to work. The clay was familiar now, an old friend, a language she had forgotten and was slowly relearning. As she worked, she thought about Marcus, about Serena, about the gala and the bathroom and the dance floor, about all the small cruelties and large betrayals that had brought her to this moment. And she realized something. She wasn't angry anymore. The rage that had sustained her through the gala, through the confrontation, through the lawsuit, had faded. In its place was something quieter, something like peace. Marcus had tried to destroy her. He had failed. Serena had tried to replace her. She was in jail. The world had tried to define her as a victim. She had refused. And now, sitting at her wheel, covered in clay, building something beautiful from nothing, Victoria Chen finally understood who she was. Not a wife, not a victim, not a scandal. An artist, a survivor, a woman who had walked through fire and come out the other side stronger than she had ever been. She finished the piece she was working on and held it up to the light. It was a bowl, simple, elegant. The glaze she had chosen was deep blue, with streaks of gold running through it, like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. She thought about what to call it, and then she knew. She would call it After the Rain. Because that's what this was. The moment after the storm. The moment when the clouds part and the light comes back, and you realize that you survived. Victoria set the bowl carefully on the shelf with the others. Then she went upstairs to tell her father that she wasn't taking the deal. She wasn't hiding anymore. She wasn't settling. She was just getting started. 6 months after the gala, Victoria Chen stood in the center of the Whitmore Gallery in Chelsea, surrounded by 47 pieces of her work. The exhibition was called Breaking Free. Every piece told a story. The dark, jagged sculptures from those first weeks after she left Marcus. The transitional works, half chaos and half beauty, that marked her slow climb out of the wreckage. And the newest pieces, luminous and whole, that showed a woman who had finally found her way back to herself. The gallery owner, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Whitmore, had called it the most powerful collection she had seen in 20 years. Victoria called it survival. Nervous? She turned to find her father standing behind her, 2 glasses of champagne in his hands. Terrified, she admitted. Good. That means it matters. He handed her a glass. The doors open in 30 minutes. The guest list is full. Rebecca Torres is here, plus 3 other journalists. And I counted 4 gallery owners from Europe in the crowd outside. You're not helping with the nerves. Henry smiled. You don't need help. You've got this, Mia. She took a sip of champagne and looked around the gallery. Her work filled the space, each piece lit perfectly, each one a fragment of her journey. In the center of the room, on a pedestal of its own, sat the bowl she had made that day in her studio. After the rain. Blue and gold, storm and sunlight. It was the heart of the exhibition. I keep thinking he's going to show up, she said quietly. Marcus. I keep expecting him to walk through those doors and ruin everything. He won't. How do you know? Henry's expression hardened. Because he's in Connecticut, trying to rebuild what's left of his life. The countersuit was dropped. The divorce was finalized last month. He has no legal standing to come anywhere near you. Legal standing never stopped him before. No, but the restraining order might. Henry put a hand on her shoulder. He's done, Victoria. He lost everything. His company, his reputation, his mistress. The only thing he has left is a small trust fund from his grandfather and a rented cottage in the middle of nowhere. He's not a threat anymore. He's just a cautionary tale. Victoria wanted to believe him. She wanted to let go of the fear that had lived in her chest for so long. But 6 years of conditioning didn't disappear overnight. What if people don't like the work? She asked, changing the subject. What if they think it's too personal, too raw? Then they're not paying attention. Henry turned her to face him. Listen to me. What you've created here is extraordinary. Not because it's technically perfect or commercially viable, because it's true. Every piece in this room tells the truth about what you went through, and the truth is always powerful. You sound like Mom. Henry's face softened. She would be so proud of you. You know that, right? Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. I wish she could see this. She can. Somehow, somewhere, she can. The gallery doors opened precisely at 7. The crowd that poured in was larger than Victoria had expected. Art collectors, journalists, socialites, friends she had lost touch with during her marriage. They moved through the space, studying her work, whispering to each other, occasionally glancing at her with expressions that ranged from curiosity to admiration. Victoria stood near the entrance, greeting guests, answering questions, trying not to feel like an imposter in her own exhibition. An hour into the evening, Patricia Whitmore appeared at her elbow. We've already sold 12 pieces, she said, her voice tight with barely contained excitement. And I've had 3 inquiries about commissioning new work. Victoria, this is a triumph. It doesn't feel like a triumph. It feels like standing naked in front of a crowd. That's what good art is supposed to feel like. Patricia squeezed her arm. There's someone who wants to meet you. She's been standing in front of After the Rain for 20 minutes. Victoria followed Patricia's gaze to the center of the room. An elderly woman stood before the blue and gold bowl, her head tilted slightly, her expression unreadable. She was small, elegant, dressed in a simple black dress that probably cost more than Victoria's first car. Who is she? Margaret Ashford. Victoria's blood went cold. Marcus's grandmother? The very same. She asked to speak with you privately. I don't want to talk to anyone from that family. I understand, but she specifically said she's not here on Marcus's behalf. She said she's here to apologize. Victoria stood frozen, her mind racing. Margaret Ashford was a legend in New York society. She had built the Ashford fortune from nothing, turning a small construction company into a real estate empire. She was also the only member of Marcus's family who had never attended the wedding. Victoria had always wondered why. "Fine," she heard herself say. "I'll talk to her." She crossed the gallery, her heart pounding, and stopped beside the elderly woman. "Mrs. Ashford." Margaret turned to look at her. Her eyes were sharp, intelligent, the same blue as Marcus's, but without the cruelty. "Victoria, thank you for agreeing to speak with me. Patricia said you wanted to apologize. I'm not sure what you have to apologize for." "For my grandson. For what he did to you. For what my family did to you." Victoria felt her defenses rise. "You weren't there. You didn't do anything." "Exactly." Margaret's voice was heavy with regret. "I wasn't there. I saw what Marcus was becoming years ago. I saw the cruelty, the narcissism, the way he treated the people around him. I tried to talk to his parents about it. They didn't listen. They thought I was being dramatic." "Why didn't you come to the wedding?" "Because I knew. I knew he would destroy you, just like he destroyed everyone else who got close to him. I couldn't watch it happen, so I stayed away." Margaret's eyes glistened. "I told myself it wasn't my responsibility, that you were an adult who made your own choices. But I should have warned you. I should have said something. I will carry that guilt for the rest of my life." Victoria didn't know what to say. She had expected hostility from Marcus's family. Blame, accusations. Not this quiet, devastating confession. "He hurt you badly," Margaret continued. "I know that. But I want you to know that he didn't come from nothing. The Ashford family wasn't always like this. My husband was a good man, a kind man. Somewhere along the way, we lost our values. We got so focused on money and status that we forgot what really mattered. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to understand something." Margaret reached out and took Victoria's hand. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "What happened to you was not your fault. You didn't fail. You didn't miss the signs. Marcus is very good at hiding what he is. He fooled everyone for years. The fact that you survived, that you got out, that you rebuilt your life, that's a testament to your strength, not your weakness." Victoria felt something shift inside her. A weight she hadn't even known she was carrying began to lift. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything." Margaret released her hand and turned back to the bowl. "This piece is extraordinary. The way the gold cuts through the blue. It's like watching hope break through despair." "That's exactly what I was trying to capture." "You succeeded." Margaret smiled, and for a moment, she looked younger, lighter. "I'm going to buy it, if that's acceptable to you." "Why?" "Because I want a reminder of what strength looks like, of what survival looks like." She paused. "And because I want to make sure that at least one person in the Ashford family remembers the woman my grandson tried to destroy. The woman who refused to be destroyed." Victoria felt tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for saying that." "Thank yourself." Margaret turned to leave, then stopped. "One more thing. Marcus called me last week, begging for money, for help,
for someone to believe his version of events.
What did you tell him?
I told him he was no longer my grandson. Her voice was cold, final. I told him that when you hurt someone the way he hurt you, you forfeit the right to call yourself an Ashford. And I told him that if he ever contacts you again, if he ever tries to hurt you again, I will personally make sure he spends the rest of his life regretting it. She walked away without another word, disappearing into the crowd.
Victoria stood alone in front of After the Rain, her chest tight with emotions she couldn't name. A hand touched her shoulder. "Are you okay?" She turned to find Henry standing behind her, concern etched on his face. "I don't know," she admitted. "I think I just had the strangest conversation of my life." "I saw you talking to Margaret Ashford. What did she want?" "To apologize, to buy my work, to tell me that Marcus is dead to her." Victoria shook her head. "I don't understand this family."
"Neither do I. But I do understand this." Henry gestured at the gallery around them. The crowds, the sold stickers appearing on piece after piece, the journalists taking notes, the collectors arguing over who would get the remaining works. This is your night, Mia. This is your triumph. Whatever Marcus did to you, whatever his family did to you, it doesn't matter anymore. You won. Did I? Look around you. Look at what you built. Look at who you've become. Henry's voice was thick with emotion. 6 months ago, you were crying in a bathroom at a gala, thinking your life was over. Tonight, you're standing in the middle of your own exhibition, surrounded by people who love your work, who believe in your vision. That's not just winning. That's resurrection. Victoria looked around the gallery. He was right. Somewhere between the gala and this moment, she had stopped being a victim. She had stopped being Mrs. Marcus Ashford. She had stopped being the woman who gave up everything for a man who gave her nothing in return. She had become someone new, someone stronger, someone real. "I want to make a toast," she said suddenly. "Now?" "Right now." She grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and clinked a fork against it. The crowd slowly quieted, turning to face her. Victoria looked out at the sea of faces, friends, strangers, journalists, collectors. Her father, standing in the back, his eyes bright with pride.
"Thank you all for coming tonight," she began. "This exhibition means more to me than I can possibly express. Not just because of the art, but because of what it represents." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "A year ago, I was lost. I had spent 6 years trying to be someone I wasn't, trying to fit into a world that didn't want me, trying to please a man who could never be pleased. I had given up my art, my friends, my identity. I had become a ghost in my own life." The room was silent. Every eye was on her. And then, one night, everything changed. I learned that the people I trusted had betrayed me. I learned that the life I had built was a lie. I learned that the man I had married had never loved me at all. She felt tears threaten, but she pushed through. But I also learned something else. I learned that I was stronger than I knew. I learned that the parts of myself I thought were lost were still there, waiting for me to find them again. I learned that it's never too late to start over. She raised her glass. This exhibition is called Breaking Free, but it could just as easily be called Coming Home. Because that's what this journey has been. A long, painful, beautiful journey back to myself. She looked at her father. "To everyone who supported me along the way. To everyone who believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. To everyone who refused to let me give up." Her voice broke. "Thank you. From the bottom of my heart. Thank you." The room erupted in applause.
Victoria stood in the center of the gallery, tears streaming down her face, surrounded by her art and her truth, and the people who had helped her survive. And for the first time in as long as she could remember, she felt whole. The exhibition was a success. Every piece sold by the end of the night. 3 galleries from Europe offered her solo shows. 2 publishers contacted her about writing a memoir.
Rebecca Torres wrote a follow-up piece calling Victoria the artist who turned her pain into power. But the moment Victoria would remember most came at the end of the evening, when the crowds had finally thinned and the caterers were beginning to clean up. She stood alone in front of the empty pedestal where "After the Rain" had been, thinking about Margaret Ashford, about Marcus, about everything that had brought her to this moment. Her father appeared beside her. "Ready to go home?" "Almost." She turned to face him. "I want to ask you something." "Anything." "All those years ago, when you decided to keep your identity secret, when you decided to raise me as a normal person, will you ever worry that you made the wrong choice?" Henry considered the question carefully. "Every single day," he admitted. "Every time I saw you struggle, every time I watched you work 2 jobs to pay for art school, every time I couldn't give you the easy life I had the power to provide, I questioned myself. I wondered if I was being selfish, if I was putting my philosophy ahead of your well-being." "Do you still wonder?" "No." He shook his head slowly. "Because I see who you've become. I see your strength, your resilience, your ability to survive things that would have broken most people. And I know that if I had raised you with money and privilege, you wouldn't be the woman you are today." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do." He took her hands in his. "Money doesn't build character, Mia. Struggle does. Pain does. The choice to keep going when everything is telling you to give up. That's what makes a person strong. And you are the strongest person I have ever known." Victoria felt fresh tears spill down her cheeks. "I love you, Dad." "I love you too, sweetheart. More than you will ever know." They stood together in the empty gallery, father and daughter, surrounded by the ghosts of art that had already found new homes. And Victoria finally understood. The gala, the humiliation, the betrayal, the long, painful months of rebuilding. It had all been necessary, not because she deserved to suffer, but because suffering had revealed who she truly was. She was not the woman Marcus had tried to create. She was not the victim the world had tried to see. She was Victoria Chen, artist, daughter, survivor. A woman who had walked through fire and emerged not just unburned, but transformed. She looked around the gallery one last time. Tomorrow, the walls would be bare. Tomorrow, she would start working on her next collection. Tomorrow, a new chapter would begin. But tonight, she would savor this moment. The moment when she finally, completely, irrevocably, became herself again. "Let's go home," she said. They walked out of the gallery together, into the cool night air of the city that had witnessed her lowest moment and her highest triumph. Behind them, the lights of the Whitmore Gallery went dark, and Victoria Chen walked forward into a future she had built with her own 2 hands, not because a man had rescued her, not because money had saved her, but because she had rescued herself. And that, in the end, was the only truth that mattered.